Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Pierce. I'm the Learning and Video Ambassador for Techsmith Corporation. Glad you could be here with us today. We had a week off last week. And of course, you come back and you change everything. You change your location where you're living, your setup. I've changed literally almost everything. And things weren't working, so we're sorry for getting started a little bit late today. But we're glad that you're with us. We've got a great show. We're going to be talking about writing scripts. Now, I know we just talked about writing scripts. We're going to bring a much more focused point of view from our own Techsmithies on Andy Owen and Justin Simon. We're going to be talking about writing scripts and give us stories about what we've done, what works, and how to make that something practical. Because we know most of us don't actually like writing scripts in terms of having to do our own work there, because it seems like be a lot more work when you, especially if you're a subject matter expert. So, but before we do that, I want to jump into one thing that we like to talk about, of course, is the Techsmith Academy. The Techsmith Academy is a free online learning platform that you can learn about all sorts of video creation topics, including writing scripts, creating storyboards, shot lists, lighting your videos, which is an important subject, recording great audio, which is an even more important subject. You can learn about screen recording, and things like, creating job aids and writing helpful help, all part of helping your audience better understand the things that you do, whether you're creating software, documentation for internal for your organization, whatever it might be. We've got something there for you that we hope helps. All right, with that said, before we jump into today's topic, let me just say this. So I have worked at Techsmith for a good long time. I think I talk about it, we're going up on 15 years, which nowadays seems like I might as well be ancient. But I have the great privilege of working with these two gentlemen. Andy Owen, he is a video production specialist at Techsmith Corporation. I've been working with him a few years. He has actually helped the vision of the Techsmith Academy come to realization early on. So someone I look to and trust. Have learned so much from him and continue to learn about video creation and editing, all of those things. But not only that, he's just a great human being and someone who has great insight. And he takes a lot of great video and helps Techsmith make a lot of great video. And then we also got Justin Simon. And Justin, funny enough, I actually met Justin because I hired his brother as an intern at Techsmith. And Justin has been working on a content team. He knows all sorts of stuff about social SEO, search engine optimization. And he's a great writer and someone that I have awesome conversations with, and he gets me excited about some of these topics and doing things and leads the charge, not only with talking about, hey, this is what we could do, but this is how we could do it, and he goes and leads for us. So both these, I'm so excited they're both here. I know they're probably like thinking, oh my gosh, what have I got myself into? But I want to welcome to the Visual Lounge, Andy Owen and Justin Simon. Welcome, guys.
Well, thank you.
Andy, you're clear as day. Well, we're gonna forget. It doesn't matter, right? Because it's less important.
The video guy.
We can. You're always mostly used to be behind the camera. Now you're in front of it a whole bunch more, right?
It is true. I was gonna say due to quarantine, and this looks great, by the way. I'm so enjoying my own preview, and I've told you guys behind the scenes. My wife also works for Techsmith, and she's right now running a live Snagit webinar as well. So we are just eating up bandwidth in our house. So hopefully her screen looks clearer than mine. But yes, I've been in front of the camera lately on our YouTube channel, talking about kind of some quick video tips, some easy things you can do to get better at video, including have a clear picture. No, it hasn't included that, but it should now.
But we know that picture quality is way less important than audio quality. So
that's true. How do I sound?
You sound great. Yeah, so we were just talking about the early days of the Techsmith Academy, and I think one thing that stood out to me in those days, Andy, is I'd been working on video here and there, like a lot of it was screen tutorial stuff, and this was our first kind of like my really first big production around story, where we're going to do things. Mm-hmm. And I think for me the big takeaway from that was, especially with scripting, is I wrote the words for most of those early Academy courses, and I had a vision for what I thought it would look like. But I remember you and our other video producer at the time, Barrett, telling me like, yeah, this doesn't really work.
Right.
And I think that's been something that has stuck with me about thinking about, like, you got to think beyond your script, especially with camera productions. You just can't think about what's going to be said. You got to think about what it's going to look like with that.
It's very three-dimensional in that way, right? You have to not just write something that sounds good or reads good, reads well, but it also has to be something well, what are we going to be talking about this? It's nice to have kind of ethereal thought and good ideas, but at the same time, like, what are people going to be watching when we're talking about this, lofty idea? And so it's just one of those things that visuals, obviously, in a medium like video, play an incredibly important role. And so whether we're talking about storyboarding, which isn't always part of the script writing process, but can be, or if we're just talking about kind of making notes in the sidebar, like, hey, when he's saying this, include this on screen, which is actually more what I do lately, but that's jumping ahead a bit, I think. Is just kind of leaving notes for myself as to what I'm envisioning on screen while I'm saying, A, B, and C.
Yeah, I mean, I think, but it's such a good point, right? Like, because if you look at any kind of video production that's like, I mean, professional, like, means you get paid for it, but like, you look at TV, you look at movies, and everything is shot with such intention, and it's easy to forget that you're marrying not just what's being said, but what's happening. And I forgot that, like, or I didn't realize it was going to be such a big deal. I'm like, no, you just point the camera at them, and you're like, well, how did they get into that room, or how do they know? And I think that's an important part of scripting is remembering that, even though it's not everything, but it's a good portion of it.
Well, I'd even tell you too, like, I'm sitting here writing these scripts for videos that we're doing on YouTube right now. And even if I'm walking through a process of software I'm very familiar with, Camtasia and Snagit, I talk about, okay, you're going to click the create button and then import from images. Nope, that's not what it is. It's image from, and it's just even remembering the words is difficult. So really walking through the process you plan on showing on screen while you're scripting helps immensely, because you can actually put feet to your words and say, oh, I missed that at this point. I actually need to go into the theme manager, not just import a theme randomly. There's a whole other process that I forgot about, because it's just become such a habit. You forget that there's 7 steps, not 5.
Right. So let's tell us, is there anything that I didn't say about you that you'd like the audience to know about before we get chatting with you too about scripting?
Well, you said Andy was a great human, and you left that out about me. So I think that's that's the first thing I'd say. But no, I think you covered it. I've been here since 2011 and done a whole bunch of different content roles. Now Andy and I get to kind of jam on the YouTube side of things, and I think it's interesting because we both come to it with very different perspectives. Like you had said, you come to it with a much more maybe visual eye to what it means to script write. And for me, I come from the writing background, so I'm very much into like, what are the exact words being said at this time and how to sort of tell that message in a more defined way. So Andy and I have to balance each other out, because I'll put things in a script, and this has happened many, many times, and I'll say, yeah, but what do I show there? What am I supposed to display as these words are being said? And so like it's a good balance to be able to work together on those things, because I'm certainly not a video expert. You're talking about how does somebody come into a room and do all those things for that type of thing. My mind is not even close to anywhere near that. But I think as far as for the types of videos that folks are going to be making with Techsmith software, whether it's a demo video or a training video or even something for, an online class, it doesn't have to be that complex. I think sometimes script writing can feel really, really overwhelming. And so I think that's some of the stuff that I want to get into today, is just how to make it a little bit easier on folks.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I see a question that I think is going to be really good to get going here, but I want to talk a little bit about kind of that most recent experience of what you guys are doing, because I think it's telling in terms of the work process. That Andy is bringing this video perspective, you're bringing the words perspective. So tell us a little bit about the work that you guys have been doing together for our YouTube channel. And either one of you can answer. I'm curious. Yeah. Tell us, like, what are you making, and why is it that you're like, why not just have Andy do everything? Because he's on camera. Why not have him write the scripts too?
Yeah, why not?
Why not, Andy? Come on, you can do it all.
So what we're doing right now is we are creating complementary content. So we are taking some of our content that we've already created for the blog, and we are creating complements to that for our YouTube channel. And so really that is a benefit for the user. So we're trying to, whether you want to watch a video or you want to read a step-by-step blog post, we want to be able to give you that information. And so what the process sort of started, how I even got involved with this was because a lot of the blog posts, either myself or other folks on my team had written at that point. And so we had all this background knowledge of what the actual videos were going to be about from the topic side. And so I just started working with Andy to try to break that out in a more defined way. And that's where for us, it actually went a little faster because we were able to take the basic headlines and things like that out of our blog posts and turn those into the sections for our videos. Where it got more complicated was a blog post can be, upwards of 2,000 words, and our scripts have to be much more defined, especially for YouTube. And so that's where the balance comes in between Andy and I starting to work on that. I don't know if Andy, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, no one wants to listen to me speak for 2,000 words, so we try to limit it. But it does. I mean, every now and then, even when we were going through and picking topics for the blog posts, turning into YouTube videos, it was Justin suggesting here's some that are playing really well with SEO. We should have an accompanying video, and I can't think of a specific example, of course, off the top of my head, but I remember there was a few that I was like, I think that one might be a tougher video to make, just in regards to me explaining something visually. Like, yes, it's a really good blog post, but I don't know that it's an interesting topic for a video. And it may be someday that we still go back and do some of those topics. But we have, a plethora to choose from. And so we went through and decided some of the ones that would be great for our users to learn from, that would be easily demonstratable through Camtasia or Snagit, things that we can teach people in Audiate. And so there's just a lot of opportunity through those blog posts. And so it was actually like first picking the topics that would show really well. But writing the script was made a little bit easier because those blog posts already existed. So we didn't have to, reinvent the wheel in any of them. We were able to just kind of take from them. And in some really, like, they may be playing well, but maybe they're 3 years old. And so the process has changed behind how you do the topic. So, for example, I'm just trying to think, like, add captions to a video was a video that we made. How do you add captions to a video? Well, since we made that blog post, whenever it was, we've since added Audiate to our software. We've added Nomia. And both of those have different ways of making captions. And honestly, at the time, we weren't really talking about YouTube. And YouTube has a great captions feature. Camtasia has 2 different captions features, one on Windows, one on both Windows and Mac. And so there's just so many different ways that not only were we able to take the blog content and update it into a YouTube video, we then also were able to go back and update the blog post to reflect our more current way of adding captions.
Yeah, and I love this coming together, right? That you're not just trying to recreate or make new content always. That there's lots of topics that you need to fill in gaps, or video could obviously enhance what you're talking about. How do you get started? So you guys talked a little bit about this, right? Like this idea of like, oh, we've got this content, we're picking topics, and I think that's probably an easy way to start is if you have topics that you can convert. But like when it comes to starting to script, like what is the process? And I know you've probably done it in several different ways. So what's working well for you today?
So I can speak to what works for me in particular, and then maybe Andy can chime in for what works for him as well. But for me, so the way I do scripts is I template everything out. So I start with an outline and ask a few simple questions right at the start, which always speak back to the audiences. And this is an exact tool that I pulled over from blog writing. And so we ask questions like, who's the audience? Why do they care about the video you're going to make? and how they apply it. And so those are just 3 very basic questions to ask yourself even before you start writing your script. And then that way it'll put you in a frame of reference to understand who this is for. Because sometimes you could write even a similar topic, but it might be a sales situation where you're trying to describe this particular feature set versus somebody who's onboarding. It's the exact same topic, but the audience is completely different. And so you want to frame that up a little bit differently. And from there, I just outline my points, go down, start with an intro, and I just try to piece it all together in an outline and then build out from there. The step-by-step stuff, Andy can probably speak to more so as far as this process is building those out. But I found the same is true with blog writing for me and script writing, is if I can get 50% of the way there in an outline, it makes it much less intimidating because now I'm not staring at a blank page or a blank piece of paper or something, I can start with something and get rolling from there.
Yeah, I love that. And I have a follow-up question, but I want to hear from Andy first, because I'm sure there's some differences here for you, especially since if you're the one being on camera.
Right. Yeah, I will say, though, I come into this with much less writing experience. Justin comes into it with writing experience. I come into it with video experience. And so for me, the challenge was always like, I'm not a writer. I don't just sit down and start typing it out. So I will start speaking it, and I will just start, especially if I'm collaborating with someone else on a script, it's a lot easier because they may start the script and I jump into it and say, oh, I'd never say that. And that's my kind of jumping off point is, would I even say that? Does that sound like me? And I'm not playing a character. I might be a little more formal on camera just because I am reading a script, but at the same time, I still want it to sound like something I would say. So read it out loud. If it sounds like something you'd say, you're on the right track. If it sounds buttoned up and not at all the way you'd phrase things, move on. As far as the process of things, Justin was pointing out that, you have the template, you have kind of the, hey, this is Andy from Techsmith. Today I'm going to show you how to do this. And really that's as much as you need for an intro outside of kind of introducing the topic, because people just want to get into the topic. They want to get into the content. Unless you really have to elongate the intro. For us, it's keeping it short and keeping them engaged into whatever it is we're going to teach them. So if the topic's not there within the first 30 seconds, we're probably missing the mark. Another thing I thought was interesting is, and this isn't something I can speak to because we have Troy Stein works, with a couple of our teams with the customer education team, and he did some videos just for fun that we decided to put on our YouTube channel because they were really good. And one of the things I like about his videos is they come with these downloadable project files so people can follow along, because I think one of the things people don't like when watching a video is too much thought and not enough doing, right? People want action. They want actionable items. So they want to be able to follow along in your video. And if you show them something too quickly, or you don't go into the details of what you're working on, then they don't really catch it. And so I like that he included those files. For me, it's more an issue of, if I'm working on something in Camtasia, I try and point out that, hey, if I'm using a call out, you can grab any one of these call outs and it's the same process, basically. I try to keep it focused on the content and not the how to follow along, but I also realize that people want to be able to follow along. It's kind of a weird balance. So I try to make it a process that people can repeat as they're watching the video, and go from there.
Because one of the questions that I have as Justin was talking, it made me think about this, because I know if he's writing things that you're basically performing, right, Andy? And I know you've got your hand in there, you're making it sound like yourself, so you got your Andyisms, and it's you, right. It's not Justin.
Yeah.
And I know you've written scripts for other people at Techsmith as well. What's the way you go about getting that written so it is for that other person and not just you? Because I know I write in my own voice, right? Like I can hear what I'm going to sound like. I know how I'm going to adjust it because there's on-camera Matt versus normal Matt, and but so I know how to make those adjustments for myself. But how do you do that well for someone else when you're not going to be the person on camera, but you're still in charge of creating that script for them?
This reminds me of, for a while we had a series of Snagit videos that I hope a lot of people watching had seen with Aaron in them. And myself and Doug Brunner were writing those scripts for a while. And so I remember we would write them, we would go through a draft. He comes from a tutorial background. I come from more of a, entertainment kind of video background. So we try and merge those two styles together. And in the end, we thought we would have something good. And then we'd say, you know what, hang on, neither of us have to read this out loud. And we would pull Erin into the final meeting just for a quick half-hour read-through. And as we're reading through, we would encourage her. And we even had notes in the script that said, Erinify this, because we knew this might not be how she'd say it. And so we would Erinify things. And little does she know that we call it this. To this day, we still kind of say, hey, Andy, Erinify this. Like when people are making notes in my scripts, why don't you Erinify this? And actually it would be Andyifying it, but I digress. The point is, we need to have the person who's actually going to read it, who's actually going to go through it, give it a once over, kind of read through and say, I wouldn't say that. Or if you hear them stumbling, sometimes they'll be nice and they'll try and just kind of, barrel through the video, or the script, even though it's not comfortable. But if you can hear them struggling, stop right there and say, you know what, would you say that differently? How else could we say that? Let's try saying this instead. Because we all have heard an unnatural script, and it's terrible. I mean, it doesn't sound good. It distracts us from the point of the video, because now instead of actually focusing on the content, we're focusing on the poor writing, and you don't want to do that. So Aaronify your videos is my tip, basically.
Yeah, and I love that. Justin, anything you would add to that, since I know you're writing a lot of things for a lot of people, and you know.
Yeah, I think Andy's spot on, and it's tough because you don't always know the working relationship with the person that you're trying to write for, especially if you're writing for maybe a technical SME or somebody like that who you're not working with on the daily. So Andy and I work together, so we can kind of get each other's mannerisms even a little bit better than bringing in somebody else. But I think to his point about writing your script in the way that you would talk is probably one of the most important things you can do, because to his point, if you don't sound like you would sound, it's more distracting than it is helpful. And I think there are times where both of us working on scripts, Andy might write something and I turn it to maybe more how I would say it, and then you got to go back because of course you wouldn't say it that way, and so it's ebbing and flowing in that regard. But for the scripts that I've had to write personally for myself, I always find it easier rather than write, because I write much more formally than I talk. And so two of the things that I do when I have to write a script, particularly an intro, is I will use the talk to text feature in Google Docs and just talk out my intro. And it will be, maybe it's even 60% there, but then I can clean it up and I can get a better idea of how I would actually say it. Or like Andy had mentioned Audiate earlier, now that's a tool we have where you can record your voice and see the words come out, more like a text editor. And that is an awesome tool for an audio first workflow where you are going to create your audio first and then build your video off of that. So you're kind of hacking it where you're starting with a script, but it's already recorded, but you can kind of get away with it in that instance.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention Doug Brunner, who's our manager of our training team, instructional design team. He and I were working on a series, and we end up using that Google speech to text to write a lot, because we'd be talking about, and we'd hash through kind of the key points and what we were going to cover, and we'd get to the point and we'd be like, okay, Doug, just say it, and we'd have to edit it like crazy to get it to be something that he could use on camera. But because I couldn't necessarily just write for Doug, because Doug had a couple things that were very specific about how you'd go about something, because that's who he is, and it wasn't bad. It's just I was struggling to capture that, and with him reading it was awesome, because it was just putting the words down. There's no punctuation, no capitalization, but I actually recommend that. I think that's such a huge time saver. The other thing is he could just kind of go through it, and we could figure out if things flow, or then we could just move things around as we need to. So I really like that recommendation. Is it better to create a video first and then create a blog post, or go from blog post to video? What do you guys recommend from what you've seen? Would you rather have the blog post then create the video, or would you want a video to create a blog post around?
I'm gonna really I'm gonna say something, and then I'm gonna let Justin correct me. But I think I've liked the way we're doing it, because as someone who again doesn't have a writing background, it gives me a jumping off point. So if you're a good writer and you can write out a blog post or you can write out a script, it may not matter. I think the nice thing for us has been relying on those blog posts as kind of a starting point, an outline, a template, whatever you want to call it. It's been great to then create the video from that. That being said, a lot of people are really good off the cuff. They outline their script, what they want to say, and they can just talk to the camera. I don't have those skills. I really work behind the camera. I've been in a lot of videos lately simply because of the state of the world that we're living in right now. So I'm not kind of that off the cuff speaker. Like Matt has that gift. Matt can speak and ask questions and interview people and speak to his own knowledgeable topics. For me, I want the script. And so I would say whatever is written first. I still need the writing. So I think that's why for me, I would lean on the blog post, because either way, I need it written down. And I think the blog post, like Justin said, can go 2,000 words into the topic. And then you can take the best points from that, or at least you feel like the most topical points from that, and turn it into a video.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've done both. I think it really depends on what you're comfortable with, sort of what Andy was talking about. Because I think both work really, really well. So if we wanted to, say, create a quick tutorial walking somebody through how to do something, and we knew we wanted a blog and we wanted to get it out quick, I might actually record myself walking through it, take the audio, transcribe it, and then take that transcription and work my blog post off of that. So that's kind of the reverse of what Andy is talking about, where you would start with this sort of more polished text and then build your script off of that. It's a little bit more freeform. And I've seen success with that, because you can just walk through, and obviously you go through and you can edit out all the ums and, you know, the stutters and all of that stuff and make it sound more concise for your blog post. But that actually goes really fast for shorter videos. Now, if you're creating a long video with lots of scenes and it gets to be a little bit more heavy-handed at that point, I would probably not start with the video, and I would just write your blog post, write your script, and kind of go from there. But for a shorter video, especially a walkthrough where you want just text to support that, definitely you can just record yourself freeform and then take the transcript and clean that out, and you can get a really good post. The other thing out of that, especially if you're talking about creating a blog post or a tutorial off of that, is you can take all the screenshots from your recording that you did, and those become the images for your blog post. So pro tip.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what a great workflow, right? Like, just save yourself a bunch of time, do it once.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, especially you're going to need an outline either way. So.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, why not capture it? Especially I can imagine with video, like screen tutorials, right? Like you can capture that, you can talk through it. I'm pretty sure I've seen people create their tutorials that way, and they always go back and refine what's going to be said, but they just, record it, and then they turn that into their kind of the basis for everything they're going to do. Because as Andy said early on, what if a process has a very specific name, or it's moved, the button moved, or a million other things that can happen in just kind of life cycle of software, right? Since Andy was talking about it, do you ever get over hating the sound of your own recorded voice? People tell me it's fine, but editing my voiceover, I just can't get over it.
It's the worst. It's just the worst. No, it's terrible. But I think the other thing too is it's because we don't hear ourselves. I don't know how many of you saw this video. I know we passed around internally a little bit about if you want to hear what you actually sound like and how other people hear you. Yep, Matt's done. Is it in front of your ears or behind your ears? I thought it was in front of your ears.
It might be
where
in
you
front
block
of your
off
ears.
the sound. And you basically are going to hear kind of the reverberate, because we're hearing like a lot of reverberation within our skull. And so we like, I have a much deeper timbre than, I hear when I record it. So I don't know what you guys are listening to, but it's not my voice. And honestly, I had 4 years of college where I worked in the radio station too. Still hate my voice. Like, it's if you don't like your voice, you don't like your voice. What you have to realize is no one else cares. You're your own worst critic. No one else is listening to it and going, oh, she's really nasally. He's really, weird sounding. Like, they hear you every day. You're the only one hearing you for the first time.
Yeah, and I will say, Andy, because I talk about this a lot with people, and we actually did a whole thing where one of the early episodes of the live stream, I talked about this. Mm-hmm. But the thing to watch out for isn't necessarily the quality or sound of your voice. It's things that are not necessarily your voice, but that can become annoyances. Like an audio book I listened to one time, the guy had a whistle.
Oh yeah.
And just try to avoid that if you can, or just be mindful of like things like that, or just poor audio quality in general. But your voice is your voice. I hear my voice, and I won't say I love it. I wish I had a much smoother voice, a lot better voice. But like I think everyone said, you guys have heard me speak on stream, on camera, and it is what it is. And so there's, it's hard advice. It's not great advice. Like, no one feels good about this advice, but I will say, I feel like the reality is, at the end of the day, you are who you are. People know who you are, and just lean into it, because you've got no other options.
Yep. It's exactly right. It's what you've got. You're working with it. And I should take back a little bit of what I said. I say that you never get used to it, or you never love it. I don't love it, but I actually am used to it now. I should say that. It doesn't bother me as much because there's just nothing I can do about it. Trust me, I tried those 4 years of radio. Every now and then I'd have a different voice, and it was much worse. So,
just got to get an accent, make one.
Yes, I've been told I have one, but I think it's just through the nose, Midwestern. I don't know.
Yeah, there we go. That's the accent right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about getting started with scripting. We've talked, we've talked about some processes. Let me ask you this, and you may or may not have a good answer, but how do you get better? How do you get faster? Because I feel like one of the things that comes up a lot with people saying, it's too much work to write a script. It's too hard. It takes too much time. So I think we have, obviously if we can get faster, and then maybe we even, benefits. Why is it worth the investment to be able to do that?
Justin has sped me up. I think Justin is a proponent of templates, as he's mentioned, right? I mean, what's the quote you shared on LinkedIn the other day where I was like, you're speaking to my soul? And it was something about the fact that there's nothing original out there. You're taking from someone else. Just lean into it and take it and use it and make it your own. And it's that idea of, I always want to start from scratch to my own detriment. I always want to write something original and thoughtful, and it just kills me because then I spend 2 days on a script that should have taken me 2 hours. So get over yourself. That's my own advice to me is get over myself and realize that this topic has been covered before. No one needs to hear my deep thoughts. Really, they need to get into the topic and they need to learn how to do A, B, and C. And I can do that. And Justin has actually written a template. I mean, basically every time I do these YouTube videos now, I'm working off the same template that he kind of set up initially, which is today I'm going to show you how to do da-da-da-da-da. Hi, I'm Andy from Techsmith, where we help you show what you know. And today we're going to talk about this. And it's just kind of, you go from there. And then it's, however many points you have, maybe it's 3, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 7, whatever your number of topics you're going to cover. There should be an outro where you explain kind of where you can learn more, or if you like this information, give them a call to action. But either way, there should be a template that I can start from so that I'm not just going, what paragraph should I write today? No, don't write a paragraph. That's the other thing Justin smacks my hand about a lot. No writing paragraphs so much. Right?
Man,
I get in trouble for that one. He's a tough.
I guess, man.
He's a tough, but it's made me so much better because I would spend so much time. I think for a while, Justin was like, "What is Andy doing that's taking so long to get this script done?" And he'd whip out 2 scripts in the amount of time it would take me to start thinking about my first one. So,
well, if I can interject here, I think, and I'm going to summarize what you kind of said, Andy. I think one of the big things is that, especially for instructional information videos that are not entertainment, right? We don't have to make it the most unique. It just has to be instructive or informative. Yep. It has to do that job. And of course, entertainment, it's fun, but don't spend time on that. Spend time on getting the information out.
I mean, your personality can come out through while you're teaching the thing. If I'm saying, hey, we're making a quick video in today's example, well, it's supposed to be quick, so let's get to the point, right? Your personality can come out in other ways, and your inflection and your emphasis on different parts of the video, but you don't need to have your personality come out in the first 3 paragraphs because there shouldn't be a first 3 paragraphs. It should just be jumping into your video.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's just eliminating one more hang up that can occur when you're writing a script. And so, until you start making dozens and dozens of videos, there is no reason you can't start essentially every single video the same way, especially if you are creating a very particular type of video. And it's actually beneficial because, especially in an intro, and this is where I probably spend 90% of my time on scripts that we put out on our YouTube channel, is in the intros and trying to pare those down, because the first 15 seconds of your video, you're going to either keep people interested enough to move on, or they're going to bail because you didn't hook them. So you have to be really, really clear. And that's where, especially in the intro, clarity will trump trying to be clever. And so when you're, especially when you're thinking you're going to start writing scripts, you think you got to get it all out there in the front. That's kind of Andy's point there with, writing paragraphs at the intro. And what you actually need to do is say, in this video, I'm going to show you the exact same thing that was in the headline of this video. So if you thought you were going to learn X, I'm going to show you how to do X. So then your brain instantly registers that, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what they're going to teach me. I'm ready to learn it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I love that clarity, right? Like this is what you're going to get. Here's the promise. Here's what I'm going to deliver. And there's nothing in between to get in between those two things.
Mm-hmm. Clarity and brevity.
I was going to say, if I am looking for help on a particular feature set or problem and they jump in and they start winding a little bit or going in, this is not the video for me. It's not helping me get what I want to do. And again, I think to Andy's point, like it is trying to find those points where you can put some entertainment value or put some personality, but especially in the intro, get in there, tell them what you're going to teach them about, and then get out and move on.
Well, let me just say this, because your point there aligns perfectly with the video viewer study that Techsmith has run. And we talked about this data it's been a couple weeks ago, but the number one reason people stop watching is the information didn't feel relevant or didn't connect with what they needed, right? Like, so they're being led astray. So what you just said is not only, and we talk oftentimes about title, thumbnail, and description, but what I'm hearing as an additional thing, and this is maybe a little bit looser than on data, but that first 15 seconds should also align with those. So then you've confirmed this, and this all actually I'm actually going to get those things. That's super insightful and interesting to me, and a connection I hadn't made before. So.
And I think too, don't forget, even if you don't upload your own captions to your video, for example, YouTube, if we're talking about YouTube's scraping the automated captions that they're creating for you. And so that, again, is another opportunity for your topic to kind of come out in Google searches, right? Or in a YouTube search. If it's in your title, if it's in your description, it should be in the first, 2 sentences of your video too.
Makes a lot of sense. I want to talk about the benefits, because I think, again, so we've talked about kind of that process for you, I think, and I want to look at it to two sides. So Andy, for you, I want you to be thinking about being on camera, behind the camera. And for Justin, I want you to be thinking about that kind of bigger global content picture, because because I think we have a lot of people who are instructional designers, trainers, technical writers who are making video, and they're not necessarily thinking about the SEO implications or kind of the spread, because it's maybe internal, but I think it's important to understand those things. So Andy, we'll start with you. Benefits for you both in front of and behind the camera to have a script, or what would you tell someone, like if someone says like, I don't think I need to write a script, what would you say to convince them that it would be probably worth their while?
Well, for me, in front of the camera, I'm not operating without a script. I'm floundering. I've tried it a number of times. It looks so easy. I get a topic in my head. I've even outlined things, and I go in front of the camera, and man, I just go off course. I have no idea what I'm talking about or what I want to talk about anymore. I'm not a person who can hold to an outline in my head. I need it written down. And we have a teleprompter app on an iPad, that kind of I can read off of. As far as behind the camera, when we're doing a work and I've got someone that I'm directing, it's incredibly beneficial for me, because I may not have written it. I may not be the stakeholder in the project, but I'm there to get the stakeholder their desired outcome. And I'm hearing what the person on camera is saying, and I'm noticing that the inflection doesn't really line up with what they want to say. So I can kind of stop and pull them back a couple lines and say, hey, if you could reread this, and we really want to lean into that word or that phrase. So having a script as someone who's directing a video really helps me kind of focus on the message and know what my stakeholder is trying to get out of this video. And honestly, it helps the person on camera too, because if you're reading a script that you didn't write, you're not the stakeholder for, you're not 100% sure, if it's just a talent on screen, they may not know what you're hoping to get from this video. So they can use a little bit of direction as well. For most of us, it's just us looking into a webcam, hopefully not as blurry as mine, but some kind of camera as sharp as Matt's, hopefully, where you really can, what you want to say, what your point is, but a script is just going to keep you on message. It's going to keep you brief, hopefully, if you've written it well. And it's going to just get the point across so much easier than trying to jumble it together in your head while you're on camera. Because once that light comes on and the camera's recording, it's a different world than just talking about it at your desk.
Yeah, and I will say the other thing I found is you guys, especially like you and our other video people that have helped me with my script stuff, is that like I read a script and I don't know if I said the right words. I have no idea.
Yeah,
and so you can catch me.
Almost amnesia, yeah, when you're on camera of like, I don't know what I just said or how I said it, but the words were there and it came out of my mouth. Yeah.
Or I said the word wrong and I won't notice it, but you can catch it because you have the script to follow along.
Right.
So Justin, from your perspective with kind of this, the value of script outside of actually just creating the content for you, I mean, we've obviously talked about repurposing things in the blogs. Any other value that you would say that you think scripts have for people who are interested in having their content found, or even, I mean, we could even look if there are benefits internally to organizations as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, from a search perspective, we sort of talked about, repurposing content, and I guess that would be my larger piece of advice for folks as they're looking to create the script, is that script is more than just a script, and or it can be more than just a script if you want it to be. It can be a blog post. It can be several social media posts. It can be an internal email if you're trying to show somebody how to do something. I think the more avenues and the more pieces of media that you can create around the topic, the better served you're going to be. It's sort of like we create these live streams. We turn these live streams into a video that goes on YouTube. We take those we take the audio and cut it into a podcast, the Visual Launch podcast. And so I think it's that idea for this content as well. It's trying to not just create it once and let it sort of live there, because honestly, people want to, depending even where they're at, they might want to consume that information in a different way. If I am looking for a very, definite, quick answer, I might just skim through some text and some bullet points that show me how to do a process. Whereas if have a little bit more time and I want to actually see the process hands-on, I might get more out of a video. So I think that's where just always be aware of the different types of media that you can create out of that one thing. And that's where, whether you're starting with a script or starting with a blog post or a tutorial, or you want to flip-flop in between, I think just understanding how those things can work together to give you a better outcome in the end.
That sounds like a whole nother... Oh, I was going to say, it sounds like a whole nother episode we need to do. How many pieces of content can we get from one thing?
Well, and he even said like internal email, and I'm thinking, man, that's true, because even at Techsmith, we've got, however many employees here at Techsmith that may not realize we're doing these videos, or may not realize we've got, such and such topic covered as a video. And so it's like, oh, send it to the sales team and be like, hey guys, if anyone's ever asking how to do A, B, and C, and I've done that before, and a lot of times like, man, I didn't know we had these resources. That's fantastic, because we especially are trying to constantly pump out resources. So it would be, like drinking from a fire hydrant if we gave them everything we were doing. But every now and then to remember to, hey, maybe I should collect a few and send them over to that team over there and see if they'd benefit them. There's all sorts of ways you can repurpose content, even internally.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think of the use of text-to-speech voices in videos? So obviously you've got speech-to-text, will take your voice and turn it into text, but you can go the other way and take text and turn it into audio sounds, a voice. So any thoughts or preferences on those?
I mean, I have preferences as a viewer, but this is just me personally. It feels like one of two things is happening. Either it feels disingenuous, but also I know sometimes it's a language barrier. And so sometimes people are, we talked about not liking the sound of our own voice. Maybe we're concerned about pronouncing words correctly, or if we're aiming at a different language than our native language. I understand it, but I think you'd be surprised. People are more forgiving about accents and mispronounced words. And not always. I mean, it is YouTube, especially if I'm talking specifically about YouTube or Facebook. Sometimes people can be cruel, but that's what the delete button's for. Just kidding. So I think it's important to remember, though, that people are going to be more forgiving about your minor mistakes if it's pronunciation of words. As far as the speech to text, though, personally, text to speech, I'm not a fan. It feels disingenuous, and I'm more apt to click away faster.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a reason to do something, right? Like, have a reason behind it. Have a good. I agree with you. I would prefer to hear someone's real voice, but if I can, I know we had a gentleman who is a Camtasia user, and he literally lost his voice through illnesses, and he uses speech to text all the time, and it's like, I mean, or text to speech, or we're gonna get that backwards about 12 times. And you know, obviously that makes perfect sense, right? Like that's his only avenue to communicate in that way. He makes videos that way. But like I think as long as you have a really justifiable purpose and reason, I think it can be okay to their point. But be you. Like, I think that's the thing about videos. I would much rather connect with you as a person, even if I can't see your face. It's a screen video. I'd like to hear those words. So I'm with you, Andy. I think have a purpose though, and you can justify it. Yeah. Is it best to practice the pace of recording your script to better match your video for syncing purposes? This is what I try to do when it comes to timing and still have to do some adjusting. So when you're using a script, obviously timing can be an issue, right? Like if you got a sequence of events that takes X amount of time because pages have to load or something has to open. How do you handle that as you're writing scripts? Especially maybe even for you, Justin, when you're not building the video. You're just writing the words that are going to be said. Yeah, I think, and again, Andy, feel free to chime in after this. For me, that's where the audio first workflow can be really beneficial because you can create your entire script, record it all, get it nice and clean, and then add in the other pieces after the fact. And that's sort of the way I create my videos because I find it to be faster. And when I don't do that, it gets a lot harder. It gets a lot harder to try to time all those out and piece it all together and make sure it all matches. And then I've got this really long loading screen that I got to cut down and match up and make that work. That's kind of my take. I don't know if Andy has another one.
I mean, I have a different perspective in that I'm a professional video editor. And so I know not everyone who's making these videos is a professional video editor and they just want to record something and read the script and be done with it. So I think there's two different things at play here. One, it's the pacing of the script, but two, it's the to edit your video down. So, you know, if we're talking about a load screen that takes a long time, or if we're talking about a process that we may not have timed right, you can edit all that down. You can use, you know, Camtasia, you can use clip speed to speed it up. You can extend a frame to kind of pause on it and hold the video frame. There's no reason to necessarily get those things off unless you really are just like, I don't have time to edit. I need to do this in one take and get it done. It's a different story. And then you really do need to focus on your script and your process matching the pace of the software, if that's what you're demonstrating. But for me, again, like I said, I'm gonna be editing everything I do. So that's not really an issue. If I need to kind of pause, I can also cut back, you know, for the YouTube videos, as an example, I'm on screen talking to the camera, but we're also demonstrating something with full screen video from time to time, you know, out of Camtasia or out of whatever we're showing at that time. So I can cut back and forth. If I need to stop showing the Camtasia screen because the process is really over, then we can cut back and you can look at me for a second and then we'll cut back to the next step of the process in Camtasia. So it doesn't have to be one long stream of, you know, video.
I'm just going to add here because I think because I've made a lot of tutorials in my life, and the one thing that we did, I think that's slightly different than what we've already said, is that we would record the audio line by line versus just try to read through it, right? Like say the sentence or say the action, even if it's a break and then pause, and then it means more editing. Well, I don't want to be clear. You got to edit more, but just then you've got these segments and you're just basically piecing the segments together timing wise. And, you know, you never want a broken phrase, like where it's like kind of middle. So you try to, that's why I say sentence usually is edit by the sentence versus edit by the piece. And I think timing works better there. So.
No, that's good too for audio first, especially.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's funny because like if anyone has any of the videos I've done on YouTube, it feels scripted to me personally. Maybe I'm my own worst critic. But here we are having a natural conversation. And this is what I want those videos to sound like. I want it to sound like a conversation. But yeah, when you're reading a script, that's something it's not always going to be as natural. You do your best.
Well, there's a different skill there, right? There's the writing this script, which we've been talking about. And then there's a whole other skill set that I think takes tons and tons and tons of practice is reading from a teleprompter.
Yep.
It's not easy.
It is not easy. As someone who's directed people on teleprompters and gotten frustrated with them, so sorry, Matt. Then I can tell you now, having been in front of the camera and had the teleprompter just taunting me, it's a different skill set. Yeah.
Yeah, we got it's a whole different world, but that's practice, right? It's like everything else. It's a skill. You can learn, but you have to learn to be able to read and speak differently than we were used to, right? Like when you're in school and you're reading out loud in class or whatever, you kind of read however, and we don't read a lot of things out loud for kind of the acting. You got to act. You got to put emotion into it. You got to put feeling into it, even if it's technical stuff. It can't just be, I'm just reading it like I'd read anything else.
And it's even worse because you're trying to act like yourself, which is impossible to do.
I think, I was going to say, I think, again, for maybe, because I am not a professional video editor, but I do make videos, especially for internal purposes and for showing people how to do things. And I think one of the things, if you're talking about starting to just make these videos in this way, and you are worried about being on camera and trying to read a teleprompter, the thing that got me to be able to do it is to just do the intro on camera and then do the rest of the video as the screen recording and talking through what's happening, and then maybe the outro. That's the feedback I can give as a non-video professional. And that way it takes a little bit of the stress off of being like, how much do I have to be on camera here? But that way it still lets people see your face. And I think there's benefit in there. But then I have to memorize one line, and I can do that.
Absolutely.
And it's still engaging because you get that human face.
Yep.
Yeah.
A question for Andy: what's an acceptable amount of time to not have voiceover while showing an operation, and B, to hold on frame while talking? So like we've got points where it can be quiet, and then there's points where nothing is happening, but you can just talk.
I am gonna lean. That's a great question. I think silence can kill you, because you'd be surprised how many people are really just listening, and so when you stop, even if they're watching, they might be doing. We're big into multitasking nowadays, right? And so people are trying to accomplish one, and suddenly the audio stops. It's gonna distract them. It's gonna make them think either something's wrong with it. I think it's too much of a distraction to have a long pause from your voice when you're showing something on screen. I would almost prefer to have some kind of banter or something, or maybe if you do have to have a long pause, increase the volume of the music to kind of indicate that I know I've stopped. This is something I want you to see. And so at least there's kind of a balance there, right? So the voice comes down, the music goes up. As far as the reverse of it happening, where you're talking and nothing's happening, I think that's more forgivable, again, because I think people are more apt to listen than they are to by default watch over. So I think you're okay to kind of talk on a frozen frame. I wouldn't leave the frame frozen for too long either, though, because you don't want people thinking that something's glitched. So maybe you could add a smooth pan out, just a slow zoom out from the screen, or a slow zoom in if you're zooming into something. You don't want to leave it just kind of stock still for too long, or they probably will think something went wrong.
We're frozen.
Yeah, like Matt. Right? or like a blurry screen. I can't get over.
The other thing I'll say to that, I think this is important, is in tutorials in particular, is you don't want long, because if you're showing me a bunch of steps without guiding me, I'm going to lose track of what step and where I'm supposed to be in context. And so like keep those steps and that action close together. Like say what you're going to do, show them, or show them and then say what you did, but like, or at the same time. But like, I think far too often what happens is you're trying to show too much. Like narrate that stuff. Pretend they can't see it and say like, hey, I'm going to do this. Don't assume they're following, because I see, and we're guilty of this at Techsmith too, is the silent videos that's like a tech support kind of style and just helping me see something. I have a hard time with those because I'm like, where is it going? I can't predict, and the voice can help me, guide me, and lead me in a way that's really important. So
absolutely true. Yeah.
Andy, Justin, you guys are fantastic. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and insights with us today. Before we go, you get like 10, 15 seconds. Last piece of advice or wisdom that you'd want to share that you didn't get a chance to talk about with scripts.
You know, I'm gonna.
Time's
I'm
up. Thank you for. No,
yeah, right. I was gonna say, for me, one thing I've been doing a lot lately is I don't always take the time to storyboard, and so in my script, I will have a left-hand column, a very narrow left-hand column that gives me kind of cues for what I hope to see on screen here. So I think as much as, we talked about this earlier with Matt, learning that he could write something, but it didn't always come with a visual cue. Give yourself a visual cue. What are you actually going to be showing on screen? It's almost just as important as your script. And now my video clears up right at the end of our time together. It's great.
Perfect time.
I think my tip is more broad, but don't skip your script. Don't skip the script. Yeah. And I think because somebody had mentioned that in one of the comments where they don't like doing it. And look, I don't always like doing it either. And depending on what the video is, I don't do a script. But especially if it's external, if it's something you want to be a little bit more long lasting, don't skimp on writing your script, because it'll make everything following your script writing go that much faster. It will speed up the entire process, even if the getting started piece feels like it takes longer than it should.
Awesome advice from both of you. Thank you both so much for joining us here in the Visual Lounge. Again, thanks to Andy, Owen, and Justin Simon. They're both fantastic. You can find them on social. Go follow them on LinkedIn. They've got really great stuff going on over there. They're talking about doing their jobs type of posts that are going to be valuable for everyone. And I learn a lot from them every single day.